They're very good people. They're very kind people out there. You just have to show your determination and you need to show that you really want something. And someone out there, maybe it's going to be 200 people, out of which one will listen to you. But there's always going to be that one person listening to you.
You're listening to the East Meets West Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast, released bi-weekly every Sunday at 5 p.m. on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple iTunes.
Welcome to the East Meets West Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast. Today, we have Mahham Saeed, a CPA with extensive experience in several areas such as data governance, process improvement, product management, and many more. She graduated from Concordia University with a bachelor's in commerce, specializing in accounting. And she's worked at TD as an accounting audit officer and at PwC as an experienced manager. She's currently working at Align Associates as a director. So, pleasure having you on, Mom.
Thank you for having me, Azam. It's very nice to be on your show.
Awesome. Do you mind just walking through in terms of, you briefly mentioned that you lived in Canada and you grew up in Canada. So how was that experience?
So I'll give you a little bit of background story. So my parents basically studied from Canada and then they went back to Pakistan and I did my high school over there. And then me and my sister came for my university. So we've been a mix of living in Canada and then being in Pakistan. How's that experience been? It's been amazing. Like we've literally done 50% in Pakistan and 50% over here. So we can relate to both the cultures very closely because we've been part of both of them.
Okay, that's interesting. So you basically from up till middle school, you stayed in Canada and then you went back to Pakistan for high school? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. How was that transition? Because I know...
The earlier part of the transition, I don't remember because I was very young. So my sister was in middle school and I was in kindergarten or that age group. So I don't really remember that part. But then we went over there. So I did my A-levels over there. I did my starting of my university a little bit over there in Lahore. And then I shifted back on towards Canada for our undergrad education.
Okay. And how was that transition like from going from Pakistan again to Canada? Was it easier because you lived in Canada before, or how was that?
So it was easy for us in the sense like because my parents had studied here, they had a lot of friends and family. So it wasn't as if you were totally new to the culture or we didn't know how things work because you used to visit here almost every second year as well. But even with that, like it takes a lot to transition from one country to another. And it was just me and my sister. We got a condo in Montreal, so we're just living alone. And the whole kind of transition, getting used to just living alone. We were living with a lot of family in Pakistan. So just coming over here, living alone, doing the basics of life, that was quite a transition. Because as like in Pakistan, you have help, you have all the different kind of support system over there. You have chauffeurs driving you around and you have all the support that you need. And over here, when you come, you have to start from kind of scratch because you have to learn even the basic way of living. I didn't even know how to cook. So it's a whole new kind of learning experience when you shift. It's a very good character building experience, but it takes time to get used to the whole transition. So it was interesting. It was very interesting.
Okay, so did you know you were interested in business like in Pakistan, or what was that process like in choosing Concordia University?
So my dad was from Concordia. So for me, it was like an automatic. My uncle had studied in Concordia. My dad studied in Concordia. So it was like the school for the generations. So and it was just easier. So we just went over there. And in terms of the field that we chose, again, because of my father and my uncle being in the same field, so you automatically transition to the same kind of finance and accounting area.
Got you. And was there like a general interest that you developed back in high school in Pakistan? Did they teach accounting courses and finance courses, or was it you got it? Oh, okay.
So in Pakistan, how it works is you do your one of the systems is there's two systems. One is the local system. One is the other system that you go through. So you do your schooling, then you do your O-levels and A-levels. And then in the O-levels and A-levels, you actually select the subjects you want to go for. In that particular subjects, we selected accounting, maths, finance, economics. So we had started our transition towards going towards this field because me and my sister, we both knew we wanted to get into finance. So that's how we transitioned in the accounting field. So we had the background made in Pakistan and then we shifted over here.
Okay. And how was the first year like? Was it pretty all right in terms of transition, or Was it, you mentioned that you had to learn a lot of these things, but in general, the course load, how did you find that?
The course load was fine actually, because it's actually interesting. So in Pakistan, this is my personal opinion. I feel in Pakistan, the education is much harder. So when you're doing your O levels or A levels, the level of education and the level of grit you need to go through is much more detailed. It's much more harder. Over here, university was actually much easier for us. Like university was never a problem because you have those kind of strong basics and you studied so much to even get into this university that it's not that bad. I guess in the first year, the biggest transition or the biggest effort that it takes is not on the education side. If you've made your kind of strong background in Pakistan, is just learning the whole culture and the social skills and how to operate and how to catch the bus or how to live by yourself, how to pay the bills. That is the more difficult part. But in university it was much easier to get into it.
Okay. And did you find it challenging? Like you mentioned that you didn't have a robust like support system compared to when you were in Pakistan. How did you stay focused in terms of there's a lot of people that drift away from studies and do other things. And so how did you maintain that focus?
So for me, it was my dad was a very strong hold on it. He had access to our grades. So that's how he literally used to log in into our portals and he used to say, by the way, this is your result. What happened there? So he had a strong check on us because from coming from Pakistan, just two girls, like it wasn't very common at that time. It was common. People used to come, but it wasn't that common. So for me and my sister, he had to keep that strong check. So that was one way of him making sure that we were on the line. And then me and my sister really wanted to get our education done. We wanted to get the CPA designation. So being focused towards education was not really an issue because that's what we wanted to do as well. We just didn't know any other way.
Right. And during your university years, did you get internships to build up to your full time, or did you, focus fully on studies and you managed to get your full time role and once you graduated?
So the first year we were just studying. The second year as well, I did my undergrad in 2.5 years. So for 2 years, mostly we were just studying. But then I did do an internship. So I did an internship in Montreal where I was studying. It was a small, very boutique kind of bookkeeping firm. Very nice people, and they taught me how to do work, like just the work ethic part of it. But it was very like light. Then I did work in the call center as well, just to get some extra cash, but not like proper job until I got into the full.
Okay. And how did you manage to get the first role? Because I feel like a lot of people struggle, even myself, I struggled getting the first role in Canada. So how was your experience like to get that first role?
We had to struggle quite a bit as well. And the biggest struggle for us was in Montreal, there's a language barrier. So it is another kind of mission to get into that market because half of the people don't even understand, and people who understand don't really want to talk to you. So that was a situation you have to deal with. But having said that, I worked with a very small boutique firm. How I got into it, honestly, I literally did door to door. I used to take my resume and I used to say, I really need a job because when I was finishing or I was joining the CPA program at that time, you couldn't graduate or you couldn't get the designation without completing the hours. So there is no other way of getting a CPA until you complete the hours. Now it's so much more easier because you have the right of going to the industry, you have other ways of getting your hours. But at that time, it was only you can only go through a limited number of CPA firms. So the only option was actually going on CPA's website and literally pulling out a listing of whatever firms were there and going door to door and saying, I really need this job. So that's pretty much what I did. And there was one really nice Italian small boutique firm, and they were like old partners, and they were really sweet. And they said, "Fine, we'll take you." So that's the only way we could get into it.
And you mentioned you completed your undergrad in 2.5 years. Isn't it normally 4 years? Or am I
So
mistaken?
in Concordia, you can do it in 3 years
Oh,
if you
wow.
do summers and everything. But because I got some credits and from my AOA levels, so that reduced my time even further.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. I've never heard. So you can leverage the courses you take in Pakistan to reduce the number of years in Canada.
So you get credit for some courses. So,
Oh,
for
wow.
example, like basic accounting or basic economics, because we had the A levels, they used to give us credits for it.
Got it. And once you graduated university, what was your full-time role after that?
So once I graduated, I stuck with that boutique firm for I think a few months. And then me and my sister, because it was just us over here, so we made a decision. We said the small market is too small. We're never going to get where we want to get. So we shifted to Ontario. So then in Ontario, we started again applying like crazy. We were literally sitting the entire day and applying jobs. And we didn't get a good traction out of it. Never got like really good firms. Like you have those small firms that are calling it, but it wasn't the good firms that were calling it. So again, we just went door to door, said, we need a job. And at that time, the first job that I got was on contract. So it started with a contract and it was TD. So actually, it wasn't TD, it was RioCan. And they again was a contract role. And they were basically per hour they used to go with it.
Okay. And how was that experience like? Was it a little easier that you had an internship, or did you find it useful for your CPA career?
It was a very good experience. Honestly, like all of my work experience till now has been really good people. Like they're generally very good people. So at RioCan as well, it was a real, it's a huge company, but I used to work in a small department in Lawrence area. So it was like a small section of the big firm, and it was about real estate. So I was doing accounting for the real estate, and I had no background of how to do it, what to do it. But then there was the really good mentors and coaches who taught you through how to do it. It was very nice because it was my original first or second job after the Montreal one. So it was a lot of learning the work ethic, which was a very good experience, especially to build your base. Right? Because the more you start going up, you need to have that base of how to have your work ethic built in a strong way, right? So it's very nice that way. Like they used to put through you through the grit. Then I went to
Oh,
TD, and that again was a contract role, and that was in their
yeah.
accounting department. But the problem that was happening in all of these, even in RioCan and in TD, was they didn't give you experience. So
Yeah.
it
The
never
hours, right?
counted towards your CPA. So you always stuck.
Yeah.
So it was a very good experience. I was working with the bank, learning the banking culture. Again, it was a smaller piece. It wasn't in the downtown core. So again, the team was very small. So they were very connected. So it's a very good learning ground. But the problem again came that it doesn't take me to my end goal.
Right.
So from there, then I had to figure out how to get into the firms.
And did you manage to network through, or did you just apply online and that was enough?
All network. If I have to tell anyone anything, all network. As
Okay.
this industry is all about networking and how you're able to speak to people and how you can connect with people. So my PwC story is pretty interesting in the sense because it shows the power of networking and honestly kind people as well. So when I was working in TD, at that time there was this discussion about shifting the CPA the banks into CPA training grounds, and they were not listening. So I actually went to TD. I did a whole presentation at that time. It was one of the VPs, and I said, These are the reasons why you should become a training ground." So he listened to me. He was very nice. I literally just called him and I said, I really want to meet you. So he was very kind. At 8 a.m., he said, "Okay, come before the rush starts." So I went there. I did the presentation. He listened to me, and then he said, "You know what you're saying? It's not that easy." Obviously, I was very childish. So I was like, "Oh, what's the big deal? You can just shift it to a training ground and just give me the hours. What's the problem?" And then he sat me down and said, "It's not that easy that we can just shift it. It's the whole kind of setup and background and training that you need to do. You can't just be set up as a CPA training ground." I said, "Fine." So then there was another kind of, I think it was through TD as well. They have this group called Ascend. I don't know if you've heard about it. So it's a networking group for not South Asians, but for Asians. And through TD, they had free membership. So I said, you know what? Because at this point, I was desperate because I had passed my exam, but it was having a piece of paper without any value, right? So at this point, I was desperate. So I went to them. They have this networking ground called Ascend. It was basically Asian leaders, and I said, let's try my luck. Like, what difference does it make? And at this point, I had literally again walked into 50 CPA firms saying, I need a job, and none of them responded. Forget about the
Yeah.
big four firms. So it was like at this point, the small firms don't want me, the medium firms don't want me, the big fours are anyways out of question. So it's okay. So I went to this event, and there was this partner. His name was Rahul Chaudhary. He was in PwC, financial services. Very kind man, extremely kind man. And I just went to him and I spoke to you. You know how you're just speaking to different people? And he was over
Yeah.
there and I spoke to him. And I said, I really want to get into the firm. So he liked my personality and my determination. And he was like, okay, let's just come to my office and let's chat. What do you want exactly? Because my discussion with him was, I just want to get in. I just want to get in the big four firms. I don't care whatever you hire me. You hire me as an IFS, you hire me as a consulting, you hire me as assurance. I don't care. I just want to get in because I just want to get into the big four. So he said, okay, sit down. Let's sit down and figure out what your options are rather than just saying, I want to get in. Right. So
Yeah.
he sat me down. He said, okay, in assurance, if you go through the assurance practice, then you'll have to do the tax and stuff. If you go through the Cato or the consulting part, this is your option. So he walked me through all the options and he said, listen, looking at your personality, I think you would be a very good fit in risk assurance. I didn't even know what risk assurance was. And he said, let me get you into risk assurance IT. And I had no background in IT. I actually am really bad. At that time, I was like really bad in IT. So he said, okay, try to get your foot in over there. So then he helped me build in the network and whatever my resume was missing technically, he helped said these things are missing. You need to work on these things. You're not highlighting these things. So he helped me in that process. And then he got me into risk assurance. Now, risk assurance was an easier catch because everyone wanted to get into assurance, but risk assurance had recently become a Cato. We were the first batch, we were the guinea pigs. So
Okay.
that's why a lot of people didn't even know about it. So that's how he got me into the firm.
Wow. That's a really, like, in terms of just not being able to getting any traction, and then all of a sudden you were able to just work through that. It's very
Yeah.
rare. Would you say that? I would say that's pretty rare, like just being able to work it out from that position.
Honestly, it's determination, Azam. If anyone in today's world comes, and this is my own personal experience, they're very good people, they're very kind people out there. You just have to show your determination and you need to show that you really want something. And someone out there, maybe it's going to be 200 people, out of which one will listen to you. But there's always
Right.
going to be that one person listening to you. Like once I went to these networking events, and is another very nice, he was actually a Pakistani partner. And I said, I can't get into the farms. I don't understand. What's wrong with me? Is something wrong with me personally or what's happening? So he said, what time the partners, you know what time the work starts? I said, yes, it's 9 to 5. Usually people start. And he said, you know what time the partners come? I said, yes. No, I was like, I don't know what time they come. He says they come at 7 a.m. So between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., their assistants are not over there. So you can just call in and just speak to them directly because the assistants wouldn't let me speak to him, speak to the
Right.
partners. So like these small hints that people used to give saying, do this kind of, and you constantly doing this, it takes you somewhere in life.
Yeah. Exactly. So then, once you joined PwC, how was that experience like overall?
Oh,
Learning and
that was a
whatnot.
game changer. That was a total game changer. How it works in the industry and how it works in the consulting firm is a totally different ballgame. Because in the industry, you have your set tasks, you have your set things that you have to do. You have a 9 to 5, you do your 10 things, at least in the initial roles that I had. Not all industry is the same. Obviously, once you get to a VP or a higher position, and some of the industries have become very competitive as well. But at least in my initial roles, it was literally like 9 to 5, and you do your thing and you go. And in the farm, the first day I went, after all of this determination, the first day I went, I got such bad comments that the third day I called my sister. I said, I was crying. I said, I don't want to do this. I'm leaving this. And she said, you've tried so much. So just do it. Just give it another week. And then, of course, my mentor changed and then she took me to a next level. So it's a totally different kind of level of expectation, level of even the level of work that you have to do and the brain power and the exhaustion that comes with it. It's totally different. But again, on the flip side, it's a very adventurous world because you don't know what's going to happen the next second.
Right. And
So,
without giving too much details, if someone doesn't know what risk assurance deals with, do you mind just giving without getting too in detail in
sure.
terms of revealing, but in general, what would that?
So it's a very diverse field. So usually what you do is in a normal audit, you look at the financial statements, you look at the numbers. From a risk assurance perspective, the first thing that I was doing was the IT controls, which was the systems basically that carry all these financial information, how do you make sure that those systems are safe, that the data is not leaving from them, that your data is accurate, safe, but you're not looking at the numbers, you're looking at the infrastructure and the systems around it. So you're testing controls. So that's one level of risk assurance. The other level is third party reporting, in which now, given the fact that there's so many different sub services, trying to make it simple. For example, for any big corporation, they have Bell Canada that might be hosting their information, or there might be for the banks, you have these some SIM cores and all of these big kind of organizations that manage your checks and stuff. So all of these banks are relying on one particular service provider. So you look at that service provider and then you issue reports that all the banks can leverage rather than all the banks going and testing them. So that's another form of risk assurance. So it's a very wide area, but it's basically how do you give assurance on the different risky areas of an organization. Now you can look at third parties, or you can look at their infrastructure or their systems or internal audits. It's very diverse.
Got you. And once you completed your time in PwC, then you switched into Align Associates as a director. How was that process like? And how's the comparison between risk assurance and then being a director at this new company?
Align Associates is basically my own consultancy. So
Yeah.
it's my own practice that I run, and I do consultancy gigs across the different areas. So how the whole transition happened was when I was working in PwC. Again, you have to do those long hours, you have to do those crazy hours. And while you were doing it, I had a family situation. So at that time, it was very hard to put in the crazy number of hours while achieving what I wanted, because I was at a fast track of promotions for
Yeah.
my 6 years. So I wanted to go for senior manager next year. And if I wanted to go for senior manager, then I couldn't deal with the pressures of it. So at that point, I had to make a decision. So I went with starting my own gig, because then I could manage my hours. It was very interesting because in the farms, you have a set level of work that you have to go with. There's hardly ever you hear that, oh, I don't have work.
Yeah.
But when you have your own consultancy, again, the power of networking comes in, right? Because you have to find your own work. In the firms, they have their own clients, and you have to find work in that situation as well to build your business case to become directors or partners. But at my level, you didn't have to go find work. As compared to when you have your own thing, then your focus is finding your own work. So it's a different kind of game you're playing at that time, because it's more sales driven rather than delivery driven. So
Right.
that mindset took time to change, because I wasn't coming from the consulting world, right? Consulting world, you are used to selling. I was coming from the risk assurance world, where everyone wants assurance. Regulations always have to be followed, whether you're going through a bad time or a good time. In consultancy, if you're going through a bad market, you just don't have work, right?
Yeah.
So because I was coming from risk assurance, I always had that safety. When you started your own thing, now you have to come in that consulting mind of how do I sell my business and kind of get the work. So that's how it's different.
Got you. And how did you get that drive to get new customers and clients as well and work through that? And you also have the other components of the business, right? Like you got marketing, you got all these different areas considering that you're owning the company itself. So how was that like? And I'm assuming it's incredibly challenging, right?
Again, it comes down to the power of networking. Even through COVID, I didn't have a situation when I wasn't working,
Wow.
because I had developed a network. That's where it comes down to your network, right? If you have strong people, if you have good mentors, if you're just honestly nice to people and people like you, they will find work for you. So it was pretty much like I was the same mentors and same people that I used to work. I was one of the directors for ISACA for a long time, which is basically this. It's like a CPA designation, CISA. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's on. So it says it's the IT is the IT designation, which is equivalent to CPA, which is the finance designation. So I was on ISACA board for a few years. So over there, I had met a lot of people as well. So that's how I built my network. So by the time I started my own thing, touchwood, I knew sufficient people that I could keep going with.
Got you. And how did you maintain that? It's very hard, I find, to sometimes maintain that network. You meet these new individuals and then you move on in your life. But how do you maintain that connection? Might help in the future, or do you keep that in mind, or what's your process if you have it?
So it's the very small things, Azam. At the end of the day, how I think about it is everyone is a human. Even if you're a partner, even if you're a VP, whatever you are, at the end of it, everyone is human and everyone wants that connection as people,
Yeah.
right? So if you're just kind to people, it's as small as sending them a holiday card. Like right now, the holiday season is coming, right? It's as simple as sending a holiday card to them and saying, I remember you, or just messaging them on LinkedIn and saying, I saw this post. It's really nice of you. I'm so glad you got promoted. Or just saying, messaging, leaving a message,
Yeah.
or sending an email once in a while. If you haven't spoken, hey, I haven't spoken to you, let's grab coffee. It's a very small thing, right? You don't have to do very big gestures to be connected,
Right.
right? You can just do very small things as just going for coffee or just sending a card or just saying, I'm thinking about you, or sending an email. These small things people remember.
Right.
And then they just remember you as a person. And if they like working with you and you have a strong work ethic, like that's the basic of everything, right? Yes, you
Right.
can get into a market, but if your work is not the quality that they're expecting, they won't ask you the next time. So you need to make sure your work is quality is good. And then once you're confident that you can deliver a good thing, then it's about doing these small gestures to keep the connection going.
Got you. I guess this builds off this question here. In terms of people who are like immigrants or professionals, do you have any advice in progressing in their career or keep pushing forward? I think you mentioned networking is really helpful and then determination and hard work. But is there any other tips?
Another thing that I've learned, I've met a few kind of very successful people, whether they're partners or BPs or whatever they are. This is my experience. Again, I'll just speak from my experience. The more higher up you are, the more they want to help you. That's how I feel it. Especially for if you're coming from their culture. Like I felt no one has helped me more than South Asians in my career. Like that Rahul Chaudhary that I mentioned, he was a South Asian. It was just a personal kind of a good kind of discussion that started with it. Even other parts of my life, my biggest mentors and coaches have been South Asians. So I feel the higher you are, you're more giving. Generally, there might be some people who don't really believe in that,
Yeah.
but if you reach out to them and if you even message them on LinkedIn and don't say I want a job, like obviously like they get 100 different requests for jobs. Everyone wants a job. But it is the actual interest of knowing how they reach because they must have their own journey. And just saying, I just want to understand your journey so I can develop. That I feel a lot of people appreciate. So if you come with a very honest, candid, open discussion point, people usually react. I haven't like in the initial part when I used to say, hey, on LinkedIn, I want a job. Can you help me? I didn't get any responses.
Yeah.
But there was another guy actually. There's this Manulife guy. His name was Kurt. He's a very good position. And I told him my story. I literally wrote him a big email saying, this is my story. I'm really struggling. I'm really trying. And he started responding. And he said, this is maybe look at this in your resume, maybe work on these things, maybe change your language a little bit in the sense like don't ask for a job. Like these small tidbits. He was at a very good position and he was sitting there and trying to explain these things to me.
Yeah.
So I feel like people are very listening. You just have to reach out. Even people who are retired. I think we don't understand the value of people who are retired, who have this depth of knowledge, but now they have time as well.
Yeah.
Like people who are working, and again, I keep saying partners because I deal more with them, but partners are very busy. They're generally very busy. But maybe a retired partner can share the information because they'll be less busy, but they'll still be more willing to help you.
Yeah. And I guess just to end off, we ask all the guests this question, but how do you define success, either personally, professionally, or both? I'll leave the question open to you in terms of response to you.
My answer is very cliche. My answer is like, for me, success is how many people remember me and with a good word. I don't want to be on top of the ladder and be known as the most rudest person that you spoke to and you never want to speak to, but the only reason you're speaking to me is because I'm in a good position.
Yeah.
If anything in success, I hope that people remember me from a professional life, that she was very, very driven and very kind of good work that she used to give, but she was also kind. So that for me is a success, if that's how the story ends.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Mom. That was like, you talked about so many different varieties of both the risk assurance as well as your consulting role currently and the importance of networking. So thank you so much for your time. And it was a
No
pleasure.
worries. No worries. And I hope it helps all the newcomers, because I know there's a lot of people coming in this industry and they feel like there's a lot of, like, it's difficult to get in. But LinkedIn is an amazing tool. If you use it properly, you will find people.